This art lesson has been adapted for Willowbrook Wildcats from Cassie Stephens' lesson on Heather Galler. Heather Galler creates vibrant paintings of animals, people, and landscapes using a blend of bold colors, patterns, and geometric shapes. She's an American artist who is still painting now, so we call her a contemporary artist. She responds to the world around her now. She's a folk artist. That means her art focuses on lines, shapes, colors, and patterns. In addition to her paintings, she has created many large-scale murals that are in restaurants, office buildings, and homes. Heather creates what is important to her. She has no formal art education or training, and her artwork tells us something about her life, family, and culture. With the skill of observing, take a look at the artworks and tell me what you see with your artist's eye. See if you can deconstruct the artwork with lines, shapes, and colors. And how can you apply it to your own creation? Today, we're going to get a 9 by 12 piece of paper, and the top half, we're going to draw a variety of circles. If you are an artist striving for perfection, this might be done well with the pencil first, and then you can trace your lines with a black crayon and a heavy black line. I have a variety of circles on the top half of my paper, pressing firmly with my black crayon. When I'm done, I'm going to add 2 diagonal lines leaning in towards one another to create my vase, and leaving the top part of the vase open. Using an idea sheet, I'm going to add lines and shapes to create patterns inside each of my flowers. To express yourself and add your own unique ideas, do not feel confined to use the idea sheet. Use your imagination on how you can create different flowers using a variety of lines and shapes. Take your time pressing firmly with your black crayon and adding those patterns and lines to add details to your work. Think about what kinds of patterns you want to have on your flowers. Scalloped lines, straight lines, zigzag lines, all the varieties of lines will add different personalities and characteristics to your bouquet. I wonder what types of lines, shapes, and colors you can use that tell us something about your life, your family, and your culture. What else does a bouquet of flowers need? That's right, leaves and foliage. So get out your shapes and press firmly with your crayon again, adding leaves and foliage to your bouquet. Ask yourself, where can you fill in the space? Folk art focuses on adding lines and shapes and patterns, so include those patterns and shapes inside your foliage and leaves as well. As you continue to add details to your artwork, did you know that folk art reflects the cultural life of a community? That's right. It's an art form that encompasses the expressive culture associated with folklore and cultural heritage. My illustration, my drawing here, I'm going to focus kind of on my flowers up here. You can see that I have all of my illustrations done in black crayon, and there's a handful of things that I can do. I can get some oil pastels, and I can fill in just a couple parts of my work. I can color in and make patterns. Now, what do we know about oil pastels?
They get stuck to your hand very easily.
You think so? Well, okay. What is inside of an oil pastel? Oil.
Ink.
And oil is sticky. Oil is sticky. And colors, right? Pigments. We can call the colors pigments.
They can go in.
So I can add some oil pastels to my paper, which means that I'm adding some pigments. Does water Does water cover oil pastels? No. So water paints will resist crayon and oil pastel. So that's just a couple things I can do. I can add some highlights of oil pastels to my paper. I wanted to show you, I have some tempera paints here. Tempera paint is going to cover up everything. The tempera paint will cover up the oil pastels because this is not a water-based paint. Do you understand that? This paint is a powder-based paint. And then this is watercolor. It looks like gel. You can see this very, very dark. Like, do you see this one? What color does it look like?
Oh, no.
It does look like blue. Do you see that's blue? It might look like it's, some people think that it might look like black, but these are watercolor paints. So the base needs to be water, and that is controlled by you, the artist. So I have these two paints, and I kind of wanted to show you what it would look like if, is that showing up?
Yes.
What it looks like here. So I have a brush. I'm going to start with the tempera and show you what that looks like. So I have my water, my paint, my brush, and I also have just a t-shirt rag. I don't want these soaking wet. We're just going to tap our brushes off so they're not, you know, you don't want a whole bunch of water in with this paint. It dilutes the paint. So it makes it like tasteless Kool-Aid. All right, so I get the brush wet. I want to make sure it's nice and clean. Tap, tap, tap. And I can dip the brush, just the tip of the brush, into the paint. And I can... Are we watching and listening, or are we talking? I don't want you doing both. So I dip the tip. I only need the brush. I only need the paint on the bristles. I don't need it on the metal part, and I don't need it on the shaft of the brush here. And I have control, and I can fill in the spots. But you're going to see that if I get sloppy, it does cover up my black markings. Okay? The fun thing about the tempera paint, or any paint really, is I could, when this dries, I can go over it with some oil pastels or crayons if I need to. This palette here doesn't have any green, so I can take a whole bunch of green, yellow, and put it in a compartment here, and I'm kind of dipping in and getting a lot. I am getting it all over the brush. I don't want that. I have my brush and I'm cleaning it off here. I can make green. I've put a bit of yellow in here. Do you know what two colors make green?
Yellow and blue.
Yellow and blue. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of blue, and I'm going to stir. And I might get a fun or funky limey green. Here we go. And I'm going to use that, and I'm going to paint that in here. And I can press my brush and I can pull it up. But if I make a mistake, it's going to cover up my lines. And that's just something I know, that tempera paint is going to cover up my lines. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so that's tempera paint will cover up. Do you see how it covered up the black and it made it like a, okay, so we get that, right? This is also tempera paint here. I'm going to clean my brush and set it aside. This here is dried watercolor. So what you want to do is you're going to use, hopefully, a natural haired brush. Get it nice and wet. Get the paints that you are using, and you'll use your brush, wet, 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 dip the tip, and then you're going to paint in here. And you're going to see that the crayons act like a wall for the water paints. Do you see how the paint stays in the shape? It stays in the shape. I'm going to actually paint paint it in a circle like that. Watercolor is fun because it does contain your paint. If you have a drawing, whoops, I made a splatter. If you have a drawing in oil pastel or crayon, it contains your painting, water, color. Oh, too much. I'm putting too much on, or maybe I'm not close enough. It contains the paint into your drawing, which is kind of nice if you are one of those friends that wants some control. I'm gonna spread this out a little bit and let that be like that. Do you see how the watercolor though, it did not, do you see how it acted like the lines acted like a wall, it did not go in my leaf. And it did not continue to spread. So I'm going to use the water, and I have the palette. I don't know what some of these colors are. Water and the color, and then I can... So if you're an artist and you illustrated something with lots of details in crayons or oil pastels, and you want the paint to be controlled, what paint is the good paint to use?
The water paint.
The water paint, right? Because the wax of the crayon and the oil of the pastels,
Make it like a wall.
it acts like a wall. So that's fun. You are welcome to use both if that's something you want to do. This tempera is dry, so I can get an oil pastel and I can draw on top of that paint just fine. And do you see how there's some contrast? That's not like really great contrast, but you do see how that shows up, right?
Yeah.
And I can add patterns in some of the spaces. I can add color lots and lots of ways. So you can add color through the oil pastels, you can use the tempera paint, and you can use the watercolor, but I would like you to try to do it one at a time. Does everybody understand how you can add color to your artwork?
Yeah.
Good.